Rav in any topic in Yiddishkeit or in Judaism, please comment it either in the comment section on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will try to get an answer for you. For the first question, we have a question from our friend named David, and he and he wants to know. I'm sorry, a question from our friend named Justin, and he wants to know that we say that one of the important parts of our faith is that Moses, was the most righteous of all the people. However, he says that in last week's Torah portion, it says that Aaron was equally righteous. And God spoke directly both face to face with Moses and Aaron, seemingly, at least in his question. Yeah. And Moses, he said, not only that, Moshe argued with Hashem multiple times and hit the rock instead of speaking to it, was saved by his wife when not circumcising his son on the 8th day, and so on. Whereas Aaron was the firstborn, spoke for Moses, and was the high priest, and we don't see him really sinning anywhere. So how is it that we say that Moses is more holy than Aaron?
Besides the golden calf that he created. This is a question, we have to obviously leave this question to Chazal, the sages who understood the character of Moshe. View Moshe as the most humblest of men. And the Torah actually says, at the end of Dvarim, says, L'gam Moshe, there was never a man like Moshe. So we understand that also this means, in terms of prophecy, that prophecy, normal prophecy in biblical times, the prophets of old, Yeshaya, Yecheskel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, in order for them to receive prophecy, they would enter into a trance state, and their body would lose control. They would lose control of their body. They would fall on the ground, and they would speak sort of like through them. The voice would come through them. The word Navi actually comes, prophet comes from the word Naviv Sasayim, which means through the conduit of speech, which means that they entered into a trance state where they weren't really conscious of what they were speaking, and the prophecy flew through them. And therefore, their prophecy was in a level of koi, like this. It wasn't direct experience. Moshe, the way the Torah describes the experience of Moshe, is that Moshe Vaydaber Shalom Moshe Leim. Hashem spoke directly to Moshe, which means it was direct communication. It was like seeing through a clear glass, not through a colored glass, or seeing through a glass and not through a mirror. It's a clear glass. And the experience of Moshe, the way he received prophecy, was in a way that he was fully in his capacity, his mental and his physical capacity. It means that he didn't fall to the ground, he didn't lose control over his body, his mind was fully activated during the time of prophecy. So this is a very high level of prophecy, where the human mind, which is called also Seichel HaNikna, the acquired mind, becomes one with the Seichel HaPoel, becomes one with the active intelligence. This is the way the medieval philosophers, Jewish thinkers, write about prophecy, that it's the Seichel HaNikna, the acquired intelligence, which means, in simple language, it's the human intelligence becoming completely unified with the active intelligence, the source of all intelligence, all Chachma, which is divine intelligence. But sometimes, in order for that to happen, there's a collapse of the human intelligence, and the information, the wisdom just flows through them. Moshe was so evolved as a person at such a high spiritual level that he was able to be fully in his capacity. His entire self is transformed in a way that his way of thinking was able to be completely linked and aligned with the divine way of thinking. So this is something that's a special quality that we only find with Moshe. Of course, Aaron had small dosages as this as well, and it does say in the verse, then Rashi brings it down, the chuckle that Aaron and Moshe was shkulim, they were both equal. That means in certain instances, Aaron was actually the one that received prophecy like Moshe during those experiences. But overall, Moshe was the one that received the Torah. The Torah, which is the divine wisdom that was brought down to the world, was received through Moshe Rabbeinu, through Moshe, our teacher, who was Rabban Shekal HaNeviim, who was the teacher of all prophets.
We have a question from our friend named David, and he said that he deals a lot with alternative medicine and healing people through different types of oils and herbs. And he wants to know if the rabbi can recommend any type of source. Is there any source in Jewish books or tradition that speak about herb healing and planting?
That's a form of alternative medicine, I'm assuming. Yeah, there's this psukim in Yecheskel where it talks about different plants, and it talks about the potential of plants, how plants can be healing. Even if you look in the Rambam, just when the Rambam talks about in Hilchos Mada talks about refuah, talks about health, describes certain fruits that are, a lot of fruits are not good for you, but certain vegetables and things that are good to eat and not good to eat. So there was an understanding, that's just on a physical level, there's also understanding that there was medical qualities and medicinal qualities to herbs. Like I said, it's mentioned already in Tanakh. In tradition, we have some of the great teachers, like the Baal Shem Tov, for example. One of the things we know about the Baal Shem Tov was that, at least in his younger years, he was actually a healer, healing through different herbs and different elements within the physical creation to able to bring healing. Of course, everything we believe is all the refuah is kadam lamaka, all the healing is already before the disease. So all these things are already present within creation. Not to put aside modern medicine, but of course there's a deeper understanding that these medicines exist within creation. In terms of a particular book, nothing comes to mind that would really, there's the Shvili Amunah, it's one of the Rishonim, a grandson of the Ramban, writes about different properties of foods. Not really sure where else really you would find this, but I'm sure there's some modern book where someone collected these teachings.
We have a question from our friend named Catherine, and she said, since the Rav started talking about Moses and Moshe, she wants to know, did Moshe's soul come from the world of Tohu? And if so, or even if not, who else in the Torah came from the world of Tohu? And are there souls nowadays whose root is in the world of Tohu?
Moshe, the name Moshe, according to the Arizal, is Mem Shin He, has 3 letters, which is Moshe, Shes, and Hevel. Shes and Hevel are the sons of Adam. These are the sons. These are the root souls of Moshe. Moshe's soul came from these roots. Hevel in general versus Cain is generally 2 souls: Hevel souls and Cain souls. Cain souls comes from the word kinyan, which means to acquire something that's very tangible. That's why Cain was a farmer. Hevel comes from the word breath or wind, and therefore he was a shepherd. These 2 biblical characters, Cain and Hevel, they represent different types of soul types. The shamans that come from Cain, souls that come from Cain, are very grounded, very earthy, very connected to the material. And there's different practices that only neshamas of Cain should do, like for example, taking off a knife while they bless grace after meals, while they bench, especially neshamas of Cain. Neshamas of Hevel, souls that come from the root of Hevel, like Moshe's soul, are more ethereal type of souls. These are souls that are less connected to the earth, less grounded, and more connected to the element of water. The Rizal talks about neshamas, people that are very attracted to water, or people that feel very comfortable with water, and some people have a great fear of water. The neshamas that come from the neshamas of Hevel are very attracted to water, very connected to water. Moshe, Moshe actually, his name means that he comes from water. So that was a type of soul, more in the Cain and Hevel souls. Generally, neshamas that are now are neshamas that come from Olam HaTikun, the world of Tikkun, but the classic example of neshama or neshamas that come from Olam HaTohu is Esav. Esav and the kings, the 8 kings, his descendants represent the world of Shir Sakelim, the broken vessels, which are neshamas of Tohu. These neshamas of Tohu are very, very root power, very strong energy, and it could transform, and it could lead from power into force and being very forceful, and the hunting and things like that. Very that type of energy. But in general, the neshamas today mostly come from Tikkun. Having said this, also we should also understand that today, according to most people that study Torah Sasoy, the secret inner teachings of the Torah, understand that there is no neshamas just of Cain or just of Hevel. Today, most neshamas are actually a combination of Cain and Hevel. Neshamas are multi-dimensional, from different roots and different places, and therefore people have a lot of different dimensions to their soul.
We have a question from our friend named Elisheva, and she says that she works on Amunah a lot. She tries techniques in the Razbook reclaiming the self, and listens to shiurim. She's observant from etc., but she suffers from, unfortunately, from PTSD, and she only now and again, if she's medicated, her Amunah is okay, but. Otherwise, she'll suffer through things like night terror and stuff like that, and she wants to know what happens when she works on all of her Amunah. Where does it go when she's in that place, and how can she strengthen herself, and what does the Torah say she can do to help?
It's a question of Amunah when a person has this trauma. We have to understand this is. When a person goes through different nisyonos, different challenges in life, so the Baal Shem Tov teaches that part of the nisayon, part of the challenge is that they also lose their emunah. So besides the fact that they're going through something challenging, part of the challenge itself is that they lose their faith, they lose their hope. Like it says by Avram Avinu, that when he went to the Akedah, he saw the place in the distance, which means his emunah was a distance. It wasn't clear. It didn't have clear vision of what has to be done. He says we'll go up to the mountain, then we'll come back down. He has like a spiritual Freudian slip where he says we're going to come back from the mountain. There was a certain level of ambiguity in Avram's mind, what exactly has to occur. And the Baal Shem Tov says that this is actually part of the nisayon, part of the test, is to have emunah where we don't have emunah. That when we're going through a hardship, and we're going through something that's difficult in life, we have to try to lahazir gedolim al aktanim. Lahazir gedolim al aktanim means that we have to draw strength from the big times, from the open times to the times of constriction, which means that when a person is having emunah, and a person has clarity and openness and dveikas, connection, and they feel connected, they know that tomorrow or a few hours from now they may end up having an afila, may end up falling, they may have a certain shvir or break, and they may end up in a bad state. So what the person has to do is they have to cash in from the times that they felt in a more expansive state. So if you're in an expansive place, let's say you're davening, or let's say even just walking down the street and you feel moichin gadlus, you feel expansive mind, and you feel dveikas, you feel connection and openness and aliveness, and you feel generally clarity to your life and to how life works, and clarity in your relationship with Hashem. You have to take those moments and try to really harness them in your memory to understand, okay, even though maybe tomorrow I'm going to go through a hard time, and when you're going through that hard time, say, it's true, I don't understand, and now part of this nisayon, part of the struggle that I'm going through is in a way that even my emunah is lost, even my betachon is lost, my trust is lost, my hope is lost, my faith is lost. But I do remember that yesterday, during the middle of the day, there was a time that everything seemed clear. So even though now it doesn't seem clear, to hold on to that time, to try to recall it to memory those times, and maybe even you could suggest. It could be suggested that a person could write it down, like write it down. Write down while you're feeling in a state, in a higher place, in a deeper place, in a more connected place, to write down how you're feeling right now. Write it down to yourself. Say, I'm feeling so connected, I feel so alive, I feel so close to Hashem, I feel close to my neshama. Everything seems to be clicking, everything seems to be working. I feel a rachvus and openness. Write it down how you feel. And then when you've gone to a bad place, pull out the paper and look at it. See that there is hope. And maybe you're going through an experience, and God willing, you'll break out of that experience. You'll go to a higher level of emunah. And understanding that every single shvira, every single break that a person has in their life, there's a tachlis, there's an intention of the shvira, of the break and the fall. The nefila, the break and the fall, is so there should be a aliyah afterwards, for an elevation afterwards. Every death brings a higher form of life. And then life sometimes dies, and there's a higher form of life. But there's always a continuous process. It's never ending. So long as we're alive, so long as there's life, and as long as there's creation, the nature of the creation is vayi'er vayiboker. There's evening and there's day, and then there's evening again. You have evening, which is darkness, and then after the evening, light comes. And then when there's light, it's fully light, everything's beautiful, the sun is shining. On a metaphorical level also, things seem clear. And then there's the level of darkness. But the level of darkness of day 2 is higher even than the light of day 1. Because we're always progressing. You go from the first state, there's the darkness, then there's light. Then you have a higher darkness, which is even higher than the original light, to bring you even to a higher level of light. And so our life progresses. So when we're going through the darker points, we have to, when we're going through the darker points, we have to remember the lighter points. We have to speak about your kindness when it's baboiker, when it's day, when it's clear. So when it's dark, we'll have faith. And there'll be amunah will be also time during the nighttime. So we have to understand this is a pattern. It's not that you're high, you're always going to be high. It's not that you're low and you're always going to be low. You're going to get through it. And you have to work it out, and that to have the faith that you was once there, you will get to a better place in the future, even though you don't see it and it's not clear and you can't grasp it at this point. But that's from your life, from the observation of your life and the pattern of life and the way the world functions, we know that there's katnus and then godless, there's smallness and greatness and smallness, and there's a continuous process.
I have a question from our friend named Shmuel, and he wants to know if someone wants to start over new. They want to start over completely new. They've tried many times. How do they start? What's the first thing they do? How do they start?
New what? What's shot new? Like, what do you mean by new?
They want to do tshuva. They want to start over. They want to feel a newness.
You know, someone once came to the Heilige Ruzhiner. Came to the Ruzhiner and told him that he wants to start doing tshuva, but he needs a patent. He needs a certain direction. How exactly does he have to do tshuva? So the Ruzhiner smiled and says, "When you did Aver, did you also ask? Like when you sinned or you fell, did you also ask? No. Okay, so same thing also now with tshuva. Don't ask. Which means sometimes you overthink things. We overthink our lives." To the extent that it's almost it's nauseating, because we live with a lot of existential anxieties. So you're overthinking what actually I do. Start doing. First thing, you have to bring a little bit light, just like you want a little bit of real darkness. And avera geras avera. One negative thing brings to another negative thing. Same. Also mitzvah geras mitzvah. One positive thing does a positive thing. You want to start from new? Start from new. Don't make a huge grand plan. I'm going to transform myself and I'm going to be the biggest tzaddik in the world. No, do something small tomorrow. Start with one small thing. Not tomorrow, right now. Do one small thing, one little mitzvah. We'll bring you to another mitzvah, we'll bring you to another mitzvah, and slowly you'll crawl out of your darkness. And again, don't overthink it, how exactly it's going to work. Once you're in a good space and you're moving forward and you feel openness and you feel connection and you're doing mitzvahs and you're feeling involved and you feel like there's a little light, then you can sit and evaluate how do I fine-tune my life to be in this direction or that direction, which I put more emphasis on. But if you're a person that needs hischachus, that needs a renewal, it means that you're stuck, you're in a bad place, you need to change things. So start changing. Change one small thing. One small thing will lead to a lot of changes. Just break a little bit light out, a little bit light, and you'll get a lot of light.
We have a question from our friend named Shira. And she was told that when Yitzchak, when Isaac was praying in the field, and Rivka had just been told on the back of the camel of Eliezer that this man who she saw was to be her husband, it happened to be that at that moment he had just come back from Gan Eden, and he had spent 3 years after being sacrificed learning in Gan Eden. And that is why Rivka fell off the camel, because he was upside down. And she said, "Is that normal for someone who was in Gan Eden, that they're upside down?" Because she had a near-death experience and she didn't see anything that was upside down. But she said that's why she heard that she fell off the camel, because he
was on his head.
I guess so, yeah.
No, it doesn't mean that. It's Olam Hafacher, you see. It talks about the afterlife. It's a Gemara. So the Gemara says that Olam Hafacher, you see, I've seen an upside-down world. Doesn't mean that everyone's standing on their head. It means that things are the opposite of the way you think in this world. In this world, you think that a person that has money, a person that has fame, a person that has power is high, and a person that is less fame, or less powerful, and less money is low. So Chazal tell us that Olam Haficher, you see that this person that went through a near-death experience, they said, no, it's an opposite world. What you think is high is low, what you think is low is high. That's what it means, upside down. Upside down doesn't mean literally standing on your head. It means that things are opposite of what you think. We're trained to think a certain way. In the physical world, the world of yeshus, the world of ego and selfishness, where we think a certain way. Our patterns of behavior dictate a certain way of thinking, that because of that we think this is the way life should work. And there's a higher realm, there's a spiritual realm where things are upside down, but not literally standing on their head. No. It's a mashal.
We have a question from our friend named Tracy, and she wants to know, what is the Jewish take on those rare visitation dreams from a deceased loved one? They're very powerful, the dreams, and they bring messages to the living. Are they really from Hashem, from Shemayim?
The answer is, it's possible. It's possible. It's possible. Souls that are leave this world, there's still some connection to this physical plane through a part of the body that still remains connected to this physical world. Even after it decomposes, there's still a part of the body, part of the loose bone, that remains for eternal, part of the person. And therefore we have to look at it as sort of course this is not literal, but sort of a link. This physical world is here, like on the bottom, so to speak, and there's a link to the higher realms. And there's the soul, no matter how far it travels upwards, and of course this is purely metaphor, there's no up and down, but how high and deep it flies and it moves in an afterlife, because there's still a connection to this physical plane, because there's a part of the body that has a small level of the person's nefesh, hamakayim, the nefesh that gives existence, a small, tiny measure. So because of that, the souls can always be connected to this plane, and therefore the souls sometimes do come. People, souls of our ancestors sometimes do come to us, and reveal themselves, or teach us something, or tell us something about our lives and what should be done. It's not a usual situation. It's unusual. Most times, dreams, like all dreams, is just leftover stuff from your subconscious that just needs to be flushed out of your system. So it's just impressions and different things that you've seen, subliminal messages, and all the billions of images that you see just flush itself out of the conscious mind. But it's also possible, because the conscious mind is quieter and the person is less thinking in the left brain, it's possible that sometimes a person can have a higher level of intuition through a dream. Most times it's hard to know whether these are real or not, but there's an interesting that Rabbanel in the beginning of Miketz writes, because there talks a lot about dreams, and Pari had a dream, Yosef had a dream, Sarah Mashkin, Sarah Oifen, everyone's dreaming, and these are not necessarily the highest righteous people in the world, but they have dreams, and the dreams are prophetic and they're real dreams. And one of the things that Rabbanel talks about is, how do you know whether these dreams are real? And one of the things he writes is, you just know. There's something about it that feels real. It feels very real. Of course, you have a big power of imagination. You can say that to everything. But I think for a person that actually has such a dream, they will know that this is actually something that's something beyond their conscious selves, something that's really on a level of that a chalom is echem shishim nevuah, that a dream is 1/60th of a prophecy, or noivelus nevuah chalom, that a dream is like the remnants of a prophecy. So it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility.
We have a question from our friend named Alex, and he wants to know, what's the point of an ego? Why did God create them?
Why shouldn't? What's wrong with the ego? The ego is not a bad thing. When it talks about the ego, it says, which we generally is called Yetzer Hara, the negative inclination. So the Chazal tell us in Tanchuma that the Yetzer Hara is Ato Yetzer Ra, that you're the one that makes it evil. That the Yetzer Hara itself is a Yetzer, is a formation, is an inclination, like a proclivity towards something, and it's towards selfish, for self. And Chazal also tells him that the Shrabba says that when it says V'hine Tov Ma'od, when it says that it was very good, Ma'od, more than the regular good. Good means something is formed and it's completed. Ma'od is actually a level of transcending it, or even more than that, something that's infinite. So it says that is the Yetzer Hara. Why? So the Medrash says, Chazal tell us, sages tell us, because if not for Yetzer Hara, if not for this Yetzer, if not for this inclination, a person want to marry, a person want to have a job, a person want to be able to have children, a person want to be able to feed their children, and that's the drive of the human being. So what's the intention? What's the intention? The intention is not to annihilate the ego. The ego was created by the Creator. Hashem created our ego. And the ego in itself gives us is our sense of survival that allows us to exist. We do things from the place of the ego. But the point of the ego is and the intention is we have to make it a kisel tov. We have to make it a vessel for holiness, for goodness, which means we have to take the ego and make it transparent. So it's not about the annihilation of the ego, but it's about the transparency of the ego. What does the transparency of the ego mean? I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say a person is thirsty. Because a person is thirsty, they're going to take a drink of water, and that's going to allow them to survive. That desire, that want for water, because the body is missing liquid, is the Yetzer, is the person's ego that's saying that if you don't drink this cup of water, you are actually going to pass out, or God forbid, something worse. So the ego gets you and says, take the water. Go drink the cup of water. Now, you take that cup of water, you pause for a moment, you make a blessing, and you recognize that the water is a gift from Hashem, the gift from the Creator at this point, and the Creator's light is shining through this cup of water, which that's the real source of nourishment, and you thank Hashem for this cup of water. So now you took that ego desire, and you made it holier, you made it more transparent. And a very simple example of this would be, if you're walking down the street, and you're very thirsty, and you see a little boy, or girl, whatever, a little child walking by, and they're holding a bottle. It's their milk. They're sitting in a wagon, not a wagon, in a wagon. They're sitting in a stroller, and they're being strolled down the street, and they're holding a little bottle of water, a little bottle of milk, and you're very, very thirsty. So your ego says, I need to drink a cup of water. I need to drink the milk. So you go and you pull the bottle out of the child's hand, and obviously you're a thief, and besides that you're a terrible person, and you drink the bottle of milk. Why? Because you're thirsty. So, but you don't do that. Most people don't do that. Why? Because you recognize. Okay, some people don't do it because they don't want to be caught. But no, healthy people say, "Why am I not going to take this cup of water out of this child's mouth?" It's because it's true. I'm very thirsty, but so is the child. Which means you recognize that I have an ego. But so does the child. Just like I have to survive, they have to survive. So transparency of the ego means like this. Ego says I. Me. Transparency says me and you. Ego says me or you, and transparency says me and you. And the reason why we can say me and you, not me or you, because me and you means it's my ego against your ego, and that leads to evil. The root of evil is ego. When it's me or you, and I feel that you're a threat to me, so then I have to do what I have to do in order to get rid of you. That's me or you. Me and you comes from an understanding that there's something that's larger than me and you. There's a creator. There's Hashem that created the world, that created a me and created a you. So just like I have an ego, you also have an ego, because we're both created by the Creator. So the me and you understanding allows for the transparency of the ego. I need to survive, and I have to make sure that the other person also has to survive. And that's the way that we train ourselves, and that's the toiv, that's the Yetzer Tov. The Yetzer Tov part of us, the good inclination part of it, is the transcendent element that always is altruistic, always thinking about the other person. But if it's always just about something that's beyond you, then you can also stop eating, stop drinking, because it's not about you. And chayecha kodim, your life comes first. So in other words, there has to be this balance between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, between these two. And the Yetzer Hara, this negative inclination, is not ra yet. It's only if you make it ra. If you don't make it ra, it's the difference between your ego and transcendence. And the objective of life is to create a harmony and a balance between these two understandings of who we really existentially are. These are two truths of us. This is who we are. We're both an element of the divine, which gives us a sense of transcendence beyond self. And we're also very much in our bodies, in ourselves, in our ego, which is personal desires and personal survival. And the combination and the unity and the harmony between these two elements of self is the ultimate transformation and transparency of an unhealthy ego to a healthy ego, with the kavanah, and even that healthy ego then receives Gan Eden.
We have a question from our friend named Janice, and they want to know what is the Rav's position, and maybe the Torah's position, on mental disorders and the link to physical illness?
I'm not sure what you're asking. That mental disorders leads to physical illness, or
I'm not sure either. Janice, if you could comment again and clarify your question, we'll get back to it. We have a question from our friend named Miriam, and she wants to know, why did Hashem create humans in the material world, and are angels alive?
The question is why. First part of the question is, why did Hashem create humans as opposed to being angels?
In the material world, as opposed to being, angels, I guess. And if are angels alive? Even?
It's not just a question about humans, really. This is a larger question. Why did Hashem create the world? What's the purpose of creation? The ultimate purpose of creation, the ultimate desire of the Creator to create, is because there was a want, not a need. A need represents a lack. There's no lack in the Creator. The Ein Sof doesn't lack anything. The Infinite Light doesn't lack anything. There's a want and a desire to be present in this world as present in all worlds. That the physical world will be transformed in a way that Hashem's presence should be revealed in the physical world. In order for Hashem's presence to be revealed in the physical, which means that just like Hashem can be revealed in infinite potential, in infinite light, in koyach bilti bal gvul, in infinite potential, in infinite strength, the same thing also, there's a desire to be revealed, because the essence of Hashem, the essence of the Creator, is beyond infinity. Infinity is already a definition. Infinity means that it's infinite, and it's defined by just being infinite. Finitude is finite because that's itself a definition. The Creator is both infinite and finite, and the Creator wanted to be revealed in the infinite world, in the infinite worlds, inner worlds, and in the physical world. And in order for that to be achieved, there was a creation of the human being. The human being comes at the end, at the peak of creation, at the cusp of not the cusp, at the cusp of the entire creation, which means that the human being comes at the end, which means that the human being is, the way the Torah describes creation, that one day the sun and moon are created, another day the life is created, another day vegetation, and then animal kingdom, and the fish, birds, and land animals, and the human being, which means the human being is the combination of everything that was created up until this point. We are the totality of all creation up until our point. So when we elevate ourselves and transform ourselves, we're not just elevating our physical selves, but because we're part animal, part beast, part fish, part bird, part tree, part grass, part stone, we're part of everything in the creation. When we elevate ourselves, we're elevating the entire world. And elevation means that we're transforming our lives, and we're living a higher existence. We're connected to something that's higher, connected to Torah, to mitzvahs, and we're elevating ourselves to a higher purpose, to a higher cause, and to a higher reason. We're transforming not only our own selves, making our own ego into something that's more transparent, but we're also transforming the very fabric of creation, because we are part of that fabric of creation, and we're elevating making it into a spiritual place. And ultimately, that would be revealed where the essence of Hashem will be revealed, just like the essence of Hashem is revealed in the infinite light. The essence of Hashem will be also revealed in the finite existence, which means that all of creation will be able to recognize that all of creation will recognize the words of Hashem, that the whole creation will come to the recognition and the realization that everything in this world is really a manifestation of part of, a part of the essence of Hashem. The essence of Hashem is revealed in every single aspect of creation, and that's part of the human task. That's part of our task, to create that transformation. So, angels are alive. Angels have, there's a big debate between different commentaries and different Rishonim. Angels have b'chir, different midrashim. They do have b'chir, they don't have b'chir, if they have free choice or not. But the general idea of the angels, and this is why in the Nevuas Yecheskel, in the prophecy of Yecheskel, angels are called chayas, they're called animals, chayas also v'shuv, because chayas, animals, don't have that same capacity of intelligence to make free choice. which means an animal, a zebra, a lion. It's not the lion is not making a choice. The lion's not saying, today I would like to hunt a zebra because I'm hungry, and for the next 6 weeks I'm going to take a vacation to Aruba. The lions don't do that, and the reason why they don't do that because they're living very much in the rhythm with creation. They're exactly the way they're created. They're always perfect. They're always in total sync and in total harmony with their creation. A lion is always being a lion. A zebra is always being a zebra. A monkey is always being a monkey, and a tree is always being a tree. That means that they don't have free choice to deviate from who they are essentially on their deepest level. The only one that has this type of choice is the human being. Every human being has this choice, this free choice in certain levels, certain aspects of their life at least, to make a choice to say, even though my nature and my physical nature and my spiritual nature demands that I should be a certain way, I'm choosing to shut that off, to close it off, to block that power off. That is a capacity the human being has. So there's life. Angels have life, animals have life, everything has life, but there's no freedom. There's no freedom to choose their life. And this is what the capacity of a human being is, to become like the Creator. That the Nivra, the creation, can become a Boira, can become like the Creator, is only by the human being. Because the human being, by choosing their lives, by choosing not to be reactive, by choosing to have self-control, by choosing to do Torah, to learn Torah, by choosing to do a mitzvah, by choosing to live a higher life, freely choosing to do this thing, even though they weren't brought up this way, or even though it's contrary to the way they think, or even though they feel better doing another thing, and even though if it doesn't feel, they feel they should be doing something else, but they choose to do this because they know this is the right thing to do. When they're doing this, this person is becoming like the Creator, Kaviyachol, like the Creator, and there's a Shvas Atzura. There's a Shvas Atzura means that the forms are now equalized. The Boira, which is Creator, creates a Nivra, which is creation. Creation is just the receiver. And everything in this world, besides human being, is completely in the receiving end of creation, which means it's completely reactive. The lion is just being a lion because that's what it was created. The zebra is being a zebra. The tree is being a tree. Everything's just created in total sync with its boira, but it's a nivra. It's like the giver and the receiver. The receiver is completely in line with the giver. The human being, by the free choice, could be that and can be even more. Can choose to be there together with the power of the Baira, to be a Baira, to be also a creator. And that's the intention. So there is chayas to all these things, but ultimate chayas, ultimate life, exists with the human being, just like with the Baira.
We have a question from our friend named Sarah, and she wants to know if there's a progressive order of the way things work, both on the micro and the macro, being one soul and the general world. Is there a specific order to restoring these two things, or retrieving the lights of one soul in the world?
I'm not really sure what the question is.
Progressive order.
Yeah, progressive I get, but what does it mean that it's one?
Both on the micro and macro, is there a progressive order of what one has to do this, then that, then this, for both the soul and for the world around us?
Oh, absolutely, of course. That's clear. That's clear. On the micro level, which is your own soul, there is definitely a progressive order, and as the souls come through many incarnations, we're fine-tuning small little details. It's not so, the purposes are not so large, they're more in the details. And we have to work on now fine-tuning the last aspects of our soul before the Messianic period. That's on a micro level. And every person has to know within their own self, what is it particular in their own consciousness, in their own psyche, what is the areas in the life that they feel they're struggling with. It could be small things. And to not ignore those things, because those are the areas that a person has to work on, to perfect, to elevate, to work with those parts of the soul. And certainly this also exists on a macro level, that throughout different periods of time, there's a different divine revelation, there's a different spiritual energy or temperature or atmosphere in the world, and according to that, this is reflected in every single aspect of creation. It's we'll go like a very large, but to understand this, let's say for example, in medieval times or before that, the form of government was monarchy. It was maybe it could have been a compassionate monarchy, but it was the construct of government, the construct in the way people felt they had to be governed, was that it was a top-down relationship. There was a king, and there was ministers, and then there was the subjects, and there were people that were under the kingdom, in the kingdom. And the relationship between the authority and the subjects was that of fear. Fear was the primary motivator, and people lived in a constant state of fear. It wasn't only because of the relationship between the monarch and his kingdom, but it was also because people lived in a very existential sense of fear in medieval times. There were plagues, there was pogroms, there was deaths, there was before penicillin, people were dying. People lived in a very immediate need for things. Water was scarce, bread was scarce, everything was scarce, and to get that, people were living very much in the immediate. How can I survive? It was very survival based. And because of that, which this was just on a macro level, what was going on in the consciousness of creation all over the world. Because of that, the spiritual relationship, which means the depth of that type of relationship, is to take that relationship and make it larger. Which means if a person's functioning from a place of fear and a place of anxiety and worry, the way to relate to Hashem on a macro level at that time period, let's say you lived in the middle of, in the 1400s somewhere in Europe, the way to relate to the Creator, which was the way Hashem wanted us to relate to Him, was through a paradigm of yira, of awe, in a posture of it wasn't fear. So fear is what you fear your neighbor is going to steal from you. Your fear is that you're not going to have bread and water. Fear is that the king is going to tax you, or there's going to be a pogrom. That's fear. And fear is transformed into something that's higher. You go to the depth of fear and it becomes awe. And awe is reverence. It's a sense of standing at the numinous, standing like, wow, that's something that's large in you, great in you, majestic and brilliant. So our relationship with Hashem was in that same posture of awe. And yira was the predominant emotion that people related to Hashem in that period of time. Because yira was the predominant emotion that people related to each other and related to life in general. And then the Baal Shem Tov came along, the light of the Baal Shem came along, even though he comes a little bit before the enlightenment, but it's always the refuah that's kaidon lamaka, it's always the healing that comes before the disease. That the Baal Shem Tov revealed, which means that there was a new revelation at that time. Not the Baal Shem Tov is revealing. Baal Shem Tov is revealing what is really occurring on a spiritual realm. What's the Pnei Hashem? What's the sense, the koyach, the power that's revealed in that world at that period of time? Was Baal Shem revealed, and the times before Mashiach, which is we're living through this time period, it'll be more ava, it'll be more love. Love will be more the dominant relationship that we'll have. And right after the Baal Shem's passing, after that time period, then the whole world shifted. That was in time of the French Enlightenment, all different types of revolutions that happened around the world, and a lot of the monarchies fell. And all of a sudden we had a new style, even though there was a republic in times of Rome, but this is a new style of government, which is democracy, which all of a sudden people had a voice in their government. The authority was not a threat. There was no king. The king was elected. It was a president, which all of a sudden changed the dynamic. Every person could technically be a president, which means that the relationship between the lower and the higher collapsed. It became more democratic and more equal understanding. This is a reflection of the macro spiritual realm, what's also going on. In other words, it's not just saying that this is what's happening on a physical plane, but the depth of what's really happening, and this is really the root cause, like the meta cause of what's happening on a physical plane, is because there's a spiritual new type of divine revelation, new type of Gilui Or, a new type of revelation of Hashem's light in this world, which Hashem says, now I want you to relate to me through love, through ava, through dvekas, through connection, through feeling close. Now, simultaneously, love alone, in the language of the Zohar, is the wing, and awe is a wing, and you can't fly with one wing. If you fly with one wing, you're just spinning wheels. So we do have to have a healthy dose of reverence and awe. But the dominant feature and the main mode and the main posture of a person in terms of relationship with Hashem in these generations is through avos, through love and dvekas. And this is like in a macro. If you just take the last 800 years and just break it into two halves, so you can see this is like the year element, and then becomes the ava element. And the same thing happens. This is just a very broad definition, but the same thing every single generation, every single year, every single day, every single moment has a very unique and special type of hischachus, a type of renewal of divine light that's coming into this world that never exists from the beginning of time. Every single second, every single eighth, every single breath of creation is a new light. Every single chelik. So this is what means that there is a progressive order, just like in a micro level. Every single person is working out different elements throughout different lives, slowly evolving into the higher place, even though it doesn't seem compounded, because not necessarily people living today are higher level than people lived hundreds of years ago, because those levels are not yet revealed in our body. So it doesn't seem that way, but we are working on higher levels and more subtle levels of our soul. The same thing also in a big macro level. There's different elements that are being revealed throughout creation, and we're nearing the end of time before the time of Mashiach. Meher v'yameinu.
We're going to take two more questions, and if anyone doesn't have their question answered, please, we do this every week. You can tune in every week on Wednesday for the most part. We have a question from a friend named Sophia, and she wants to know, is it allowed in Jewish practice for a woman to be a student of the relation between moon periods and women's periods, and the different stages of energy that happen with that? Is a woman allowed, a Jewish woman allowed to
do what?
Is a Jewish woman allowed to study and be a student of different types of theories of the moon's periods along with the women's cycles?
There is definitely a relationship between the cycles in the moon and women. Of course, the sun in general represents the male. According to the Zohar, according to many traditions, many sources, the sun represents the male, and the moon represents the makabel, the female, the receiver. Therefore, Rosh Chodesh, particular, which today was Rosh Chodesh, is particularly related to women. The holidays of the year, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, correspond to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, etc. They correspond to the male energy. But Rosh Chodesh in particular is very much connected to women, so there is definitely a connection between women and the moon cycles. I would suggest that if a person wants to learn this, they should learn from the sources, from the Torah sources, about what this connection is and how they can use that in a healthy and holy way.
The same goes for the question I just saw that you asked, Sophia. The same goes, I'm guessing, I won't speak for the Rav,
yeah.
The Rav can correct me, but the same goes for the meditation and yoga as well.
That's a whole other question what yoga is, but we'll...
Okay, so meditation at least.
Yeah, you should look at the Torah sources for these things. And, I wrote many books on this topic, so whatever, yeah.
There's a new book out, Sophia, both on the month of Shvat specifically,
and Rosh Chodesh, yeah,
and Rosh Chodesh, and spirals of time, by Rav Pinson. There's a question. Our last question is from Yael, and she said that she knows many people, chevra, who are leaving from the Kabbalah Center, and she wants to know if A, she knows that there are some people who will be deceived through their hearts, and B, that there's something that there's the Kabbalah spreading so much in the world. How do we know what's going to be deceived through our hearts, and how do we know what's going to be, the concealed will be revealed in this time? How do we know what's the lead up to Mashiach and what's...
I'm not understanding the oimet of the shaila. What's the shaila? Shaila is what's the side? What's the secret that has to be revealed? What's the shaila?
Her question's a little bit out there, so we'll leave her question. We'll get back to it. Yael, please send us your question.
I can define the question.
The last question we'll take from Justin, and Justin wants to know, why do we begin bowing to the right on some things, like such as Bowie on Kabbalat Shabbat, and begin bowing to the left on other things, like at the end of the Amida, Zeh Lazeh?
It's a very good shaila. It's a good question. It's a good shaila. The answer to that is like this. It says, for example, when a person is davening, praying the Amidah, and they have like phlegm in their mouth. So you should, if you have to get rid of the phlegm, you should spit it to the left side. Why? Because you're standing in front of the Shekhinah. You're standing in front of the Noichus Pnei Hashem, in front of the presence of Hashem, and you shouldn't spit kilu to the right side of Hashem. Of course, it's not literal, but you shouldn't kilu, as if. Then, like the question is, by Oisa Shalom, when you leave Shemon Esrei, So it says you should say Oisa Shalom, and you should first bow to the left, then to the right. Why? This also brought down in Gemara, brought down Shulchan Aruch, that the reason is because when you bow to the left, you're bowing corresponding to that. If you're standing against somebody, physically, if you're standing in front of another person's presence, so your left is their right. So when you bow to the left, you're actually bowing to Hashem's right, Kaviyachal, right? So this seems to be a contradiction. During the Amidah, you say you should specifically go to the left side and not to the right side because you don't want to spit on the same side of the right side. But at the end of the Amidah, now you have to go specifically to the left side because that is the right side. So is the left side the right side, or the left side is the left side? Because if you're standing one against each other, your right is always their left is always your right. So it should be consistent. Why is there inconsistency? So the Rashash writes in our Shalom, the Rashash writes that what it means is like this. During the Amidah, there's something very profound happening. During the Amidah, what you're doing is you're in such a state of dveikus. You're in such a state of connection with Hashem. Hashem Sivasai, like the Magi teaches us, Hashem Sivasai Tiftach Afi Yagit Lasecha, that the Shechina's presence rests on your mouth, and Hashem is like talking through us. At the point of Amidah, if a person is praying in a correct manner, there's such a level of dveikus, or even if it's not on such a level, but there's some level of dveikus that you feel connected, that your right becomes Hashem's right and your left becomes Hashem's left. You become one. You're misatzim. You become one thing. So, for example, if you want to spit, if you have phlegm and you have to let it go, you should spit to the left side because your left is actually Kaviyachal at this point is also Hashem's left. However, what do you do by Oisa Shalom? Oisa Shalom, before you do Oisa Shalom, you step 3 steps backwards. What you're actually doing is you're stepping out of the awareness, the consciousness of being in the presence of Hashem. Of course, Hashem is everywhere and everything. But in your mind, you're stepping out of that presence. You're leaving the places of Amidah and the encounter, you're going out of the encounter. Because you just stepped 3 steps back, now you're already separated. Because you're now separated, the left is the right side and the right is the left side. So it actually depends where you're holding and what you're doing at this point of tefillah in prayer. If you're in the point of prayer where you're davuk, where you're connected, and that's what the consciousness and that's what the way a person has to pray in that state, then your right is the divine right and your left is the divine left. But when you're moving out of that state, then your right is divine left and your left is divine right. So it really depends in which state you're praying at. And that's why there sometimes seems to be inconsistency whether you're bowing to the right or bowing to the left, which side is the right side to bow to.
For all of those who did not have their questions answered, Leon and Alex, please tune in next week. Every Wednesday night we try to do this. Please God, everyone should please stay connected. In another couple minutes, the Rav will be giving another short shir about this upcoming week's parsha.